The door is officially closed, locked, never to be reopened when it comes to pregnancy. Hey guys, I just wanted to do a video on my thoughts about closing the door on pregnancy and just kind of pregnancy in general, and why it's not like the worst thing in the world for me to never be pregnant and stuff like that. Just because I've received a lot of comments lately about like trying other embryo adoption what do you call them, agencies, going through an agency, and different TTC methods and whatnot. I think a lot of you guys really just want to see me with a baby and whatnot. But unfortunately I need to just focus on every cent I spend going towards something that is pretty much a guarantee gonna bring me a take-home child. For me, pregnancy has never been something I really wanted. It was well, we might as well try kind of thing. If you followed me from the very beginning in 2013, my original plan was surrogacy. I knew from a young age that I had endometriosis, even though the doctors didn't diagnose me till I was 24. I knew from my symptoms that that's what I had. So I knew I think I was maybe like 15 or 16 years old, that I could possibly not have kids. And I was perfectly fine with that because from even younger, I always planned on adopting. That was kind of my thing. I think I was very naive on the adoption process and the time and emotional input and the difficulties of adopting, because I thought, oh, I'll just adopt through foster care and it'll be easy, right? So I knew that I wouldn't get like a baby, but I figured a toddler or preschooler. But I definitely thought it was just this easy little process. Just check off all the boxes, do the little steps, and we're done. Unfortunately, there's a lot more politics with that. But anyway, so I had always planned on at least adopting one and then having one, or having one then adopting one. I knew I wanted to adopt at least one child. And if I were to physically give birth to one child, I would be only giving birth to one child. There would be no future births. It would be adoption from then on out. I actually wanted 8 kids at one point, and I wanted all 8 kids to be adopted. So I've always had this picture in my head of adoption, less so pregnancy. And so back in 2013, I had someone who had done surrogacy in the past, and she offered to do a surrogacy for me. It would have been a traditional surrogacy, so she would have been the egg donor as well. So we would have just done probably home insemination using a donor, and that's what the plan was. Things fell through with that. Things just weren't going as planned, and I'm like, well, I might as well just try. So that's when I started I did an at-home insemination with a sperm bank donor, and then in the fall I started using a known donor. And so I just was like, well, I might as well try myself because she wasn't ready yet and I was. So I ended up doing that, and it turned out that her final surrogacy, her doctor told her no more, so she was not able to do mine, which it turns out for the best anyway. But so for me, pregnancy was never this huge thing. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that I've gone like through so many phases where I'm like, oh, I'm going to try to conceive, and then I'm like, no, I don't want to, or I'll be like, oh, I'm going to do IVF, no, I'm going to do adoption. Like, that was the big thing in 2014 for me, was trying to decide to go through with IVF or to go through with adoption. And it was really hard because IVF just had this, like, I don't know how to put it, like, magical thing about it where it was like gonna happen sooner and for cheaper and for less effort. Like, there wasn't all this paperwork and stuff. And that's kind of what it all came down to with trying to conceive, was just easier. It was easier. And cheaper. Not so much in the long run for me, but short term it was cheaper. But it's just, I've never wanted it. And just for me now, like, since I've been on the Vizan, it has been one of the very few times in my life that I have been pretty much pain-free. Now that I was off it and going back on, I'm having some issues again. But for me, with endometriosis, I have never been pain-free since I was 10 years old. I had moments like a few days here and there, but there's always been like this just lingering pain that's always been there. And I've missed, I don't know how many days of school and how many days of work throughout my menstrual life because of endometriosis. And just for me, like when I went back on the Vizan, it was like the first time ever that I felt like I could function. Where I didn't have to worry about, okay, well, you're inviting me to this thing that's next month. Well, where am I in my cycle? Oh, I want to go on this vacation, but where am I going to be on my cycle? Stuff like that. Like 3 years I've gone to dog scout camp, and every year I've been on my period. And it's just, it's rough. It is so rough. I get so nauseous. I'm in so much pain. It's just, I'm miserable. So being on the Vizan was one of those like few times in my life that I've like functioned. So when it came down to like the doctor wanting to do IUIs, because if you didn't know, I was diagnosed with diminished ovarian reserve, and the doctor told me that he will not do IVF because it's not worth it, but he was willing to try IUIs. But for me, that meant going off my lovely Vizan and having cycles again. And I had 2 cycles being off the Vizan, and it was horrible. Like, I forgot how horrible it was. And like right now, when filming this, I am like in that time when I would have my period, and even just the little bit of pain and nausea that I'm feeling right now is like, I don't like that. So anyway, for me, trying to get pregnant with IUI, that's what that meant, was going back to not being able to function. And when you're trying to work and go through that, it's just challenging. And then, yeah, so anyway, I'm losing I'm going everywhere, so this is probably gonna be a long rambly video, but basically I just didn't want to go off the Vizan, and especially for the money and the time and the energy, both emotional and physical, to go down to my clinic, which is over 2 hours away, to do IUIs. It was not worth it to me. And then with the embryo adoption, I had looked up agencies previously. I had looked up agencies for probably 2 years. I started with agencies in Canada, which there's only one that does an open adoption, and it was extremely expensive, and their success rates are low and whatnot. And then I think it was maybe earlier this year, someone had mentioned about on Instagram about a fertility clinic or a embryo adoption agency in Florida. So I had looked into them. I had looked into California Conceptions. I had looked into those, but the cost versus the risk was just not there for me, because I don't care to be pregnant. So it just, for me, it wasn't an option. So then when I had decided to go back to just sticking it out for international adoption, that's when I was offered embryos. And for me, the offering of embryos, with what we thought was going to be a cheaper process, and we thought it was an easier process. We had done our research and whatnot, and we had asked the questions that needed to be asked before starting the legal process. So we thought we had things figured out, and unfortunately we didn't, and it fell apart because we were given wrong answers, and things were just adding up way past what I could afford, that I could afford to risk for the chances of success. To me, TTCing is such a gamble. You are spending so much money. I mean, if I had a partner and we wanted to TTC, then it's a lot cheaper. But then again, in terms of me and my physical health, it's not. Because I would have to be off the Vizan and whatnot, and I would be missing work, and just, I can't function. I'm nauseous almost every morning. And it just, when I was on the Vizan, I could wake up at 7 in the morning and be fine. Like, it was crazy, crazy. So for me, just to be off the Vizan is such a huge, huge thing that affects my quality of life. And I think for a lot of people, they don't understand exactly how difficult it is to function when not on the Vizan. So any form of TTC that that I have to be off the Vizan for, just like, I can't afford to be missing work. I can't afford to not function. So that was a really huge thing for me. And I've even been considering like just getting a complete hysterectomy, because then it's final and hopefully it'll just like help with the endo and everything. Just because the Vizan's kind of expensive and I'm not quite sure if I want to keep paying for the Vizan, which cost me about $200 for 3 months, or just do a complete hysterectomy. And I know they'll probably put me on some sort of like hormone replacement kind of thing, but that might be cheaper. I don't know. I'd have to look into it. But maybe just being on the Vizan will help me long term get to a point where I'm feeling okay again. Just right now with the transitioning back on it, it's not not fun. But yeah, so that's one of my thoughts. But it's just with that, I don't know that a doctor would actually do it, because of my age. I've had issues before where they're like, I'm not doing that because you're too young. But I'm hoping now with like, okay, look, I can't have children of my own. I don't want to do any donor eggs or anything like that. I'm doing adoption. Can you please just get it out so I can function? I'm hoping that they might actually listen. It's covered by our healthcare system, so it's not like it's going to cost me money to do it. It's day surgery. It's like it's so simple. It's just that they're hesitant to do it on someone so young because they're like, oh, well, what if you change your mind? But the thing is, for me, it's like, I can't TTC on my own. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So just do the surgery, get it all out, let me move on with my life, and let me be pain-free for a bit. For the embryo adoption, though, once it hit that financial risk threshold and the extra stuff that had to be done, that then was being shoved onto the donor, because the donor had to do so much more stuff, and it just wasn't fair to her to have to go through all this extra stuff. And yeah, so anyway, so it just fell apart. And then people recently have been emailing me and messaging me and commenting about, oh, well, have you thought about this embryo adoption thing? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And it's like, okay, I understand, and every time someone says something like that, I go, oh, maybe I should. But really what it comes down to is I cannot afford to spend another cent on something that is not going to or may not work. Like embryo adoption in general, like only has like a 50 to 60% chance, depending on, and possibly even lower depending on the how they were frozen and stuff. Like, it's just not, and it depends on like, are the embryos, like California Conceptions creates embryos with donor eggs and donor sperm, and they create an embryo, whereas like I can't remember what it's called, it's like the International Embryo Adoption Agency or something like that. In Florida, they use leftover IVF embryos. So when you do something like that, your risk is, or your chances of success are unknown, because it depends on the quality of the eggs that the people did IVF to begin with. So if they had egg quality issues and they did IVF, that you don't know what you're getting. And just for me, I need something that's a guaranteed thing. And because I don't care to be pregnant, I don't see the value in taking that risk. For me, like, even if I did get pregnant, I might miscarry or something might happen. Like, I know that's kind of like a doomsday kind of thinking, negative thinking, but for me, like, that's a lot of money and time. And I'm 3 years into this journey already, and over half of it has been spent waiting to save up money to do something, waiting for something to happen. And I just can't spend that time waiting and spend that money spending on something that I don't know if there's a finish line for. I mean, if I was able to stick it out for private adoption, sure, I might have had a kid by now, but emotionally I could not handle where I was living. I couldn't do it. I would have been a worse mess than I was at the time. So that was just not an option. So maybe that would have ended up working out if I could have stuck it out. Just I couldn't. Which led me to come back here, which meant everything had to be closed because I moved provinces, and restarting from scratch. So for me, it's just been like, there's too many things that I've spent money on that haven't succeeded, and I really need to focus on stuff that will. I'm sorry I'm making this video so long, but I'm going to talk to you about like pregnancy. I just haven't felt like I've ever wanted to be pregnant until the embryo adoption. I kind of was starting to see the positives of pregnancy, But for me, there's only a few, which I'll talk to you. So like, I currently have pregnant friends and whatnot. So for me, seeing their pregnancies, I just like the craziness of like seeing the baby move and stuff. I don't know that I would want to experience it myself, but it's just like those magical things that with adoption, I will never know what my child was like in utero. I never will. Stuff like that. Stuff like vegan from conception was one of my big things. Like, I was excited to have a child that was vegan from conception, and now I'm going to have a child that's vegan from placement. And that's another thing, like breastfeeding. These children aren't breastfed, and that was important to me, and just vegan nutrition in general was important to me, and having control over that was important to me. And unfortunately, I'm not going to have that now. Another thing was like gender reveals and ultrasounds. Just seeing those little things has like this magical thing about it. And Doppler, like I was planning on buying like the Doppler and whatnot, so that would have been cool. And also like the weird like IntelliGender and midwife tales and stuff like that. That's something else I was looking forward to. And just like the countdown of knowing, okay, this is what's happening to baby this week, this is what happened to baby next week, and just not having that. And I know someone's going to mention surrogacy, because yes, I would be able to experience the pregnancy in some way. Surrogacy is extremely expensive, and I would still need donor eggs and donor sperm. Extremely expensive and not necessarily going to work. So, just because I know someone's going to be like, well, what about surrogacy? No, it's not happening. Like for me, it's going to cost about $40,000-$50,000 just for the surrogate, and then another like 20 grand for the eggs and sperm. So it's not happening. Even if I won the lottery, it would not be happening. I just don't have the desire to really do that. And like with being around so many like babies that are being born right now, I don't think I'm gonna really miss on stuff like that. And for me, I'm really trying to read on toddler adoption and find like the pros of toddler adoption versus having a newborn. And I can see the benefits of getting a toddler, and I'm focusing less on what I'm losing out on by doing adoption and focusing more on what I'm gaining through adoption. I just think that a lot of people see adoption as like this second rate, oh, it's not as good, or you're settling for adoption kind of thing. And for me, it's not that I'm settling for adoption. It's that I'm pursuing adoption because it's an option, and it was one of my first options. TTC was my second option. TTC and IVF, that was my settling. That was because the adoption stuff just was harder. So for me, it's not that I'm settling for adoption or I'm giving up and doing adoption. No, I gave up on adoption. I settled for TTCing and whatnot. So for me, I think it's just hard for people to understand, like, not wanting to be pregnant, like, because that's something that most people are like, oh, I really want to be pregnant. I really want to have that genetic connection. I really want to experience pregnancy. I want to have a child from birth. And for me, it's not really about that. If Tina, Tweedle T10, said, hey, you can have James today, I would be like, okay. Like, I'm not, and he's like 3.5, 4 years old, something like that. I'm not like totally set on the fact of having a newborn. Like, I mean, if she wanted to offer me Joe, that would be perfectly good as well, and he's like 2. But I'm just saying that, like, for me, I would have adopted any of my students, and I taught kindergarten. So I taught 4, 5, 6-year-olds. I would have taken any of them. Like, I don't think that there's this age that I'm going to feel like less of a mom because I got them at a later age. Yes, it is definitely easier to, I don't want to say mold, but influence your child from a younger age, to teach them your values and how you want them to behave. But for me, to adopt a child that's a bit older is not that horrible of a thing. I'm sorry this is really long, but I'm going to keep talking. If you watch This Gathered Nest, I'll try to remember to post a link up there as well as in the description box below. But she has 2 biological children and 3 adopted children. And I really love watching her vlogs right now because it just shows how much love and normalness there is with her adopted children. They're not her adopted children. They're her children. There's no, oh, these are my biological, these are my adopted. They're just her children. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that, that a child adopted could be just as important to you as a biological child. People tend to think of biology as this important connection you must have with your child, and I don't know, I've just never felt like that. And so for me, I'm not settling for adoption. But her vlogs are great because you just see like how much love there is between her adopted children and herself, and her biological children and her adopted children, and within the childrenness of everything, there's no separation, there's no difference between biological and adopted. There's no difference, like, in terms of love. And for me, that's what it comes down to. I could love any child. Like, I don't see myself as being like, well, I could love you, but not you. Or I think I would love them more. And not to say that, like, people who have biological children feel that way, that, oh, they have to have biological children. But I just think that for me, I don't see a difference. So yeah, I think that's it. The only thing that I will miss is breastfeeding. And I did look up breastfeeding an adopted toddler, but because of the Vizan says you shouldn't breastfeed on it. And also a lot of toddlers don't want to breastfeed that haven't breastfed before, and I just don't know that it's worth my time and energy to try to breastfeed when there's 1,000 other ways to bond with a toddler. And I know some people are gonna be like, oh my god, that's so gross, you want to breastfeed a toddler, and you guys are weird. In the positive breastfeeding community, whatever. But it's more just like that time and energy, and the fact that Vizan, there's no research on Vizan and breast milk, even though I probably wouldn't produce a whole lot of breast milk. I would be using like a nursing supplement system, and either using some sort of formula, because depending on their age, they might actually need formula because they might be under a year, or even if they're under 2, it might be it might benefit them to be on some sort of formula. So I was going to do that, or even just like a soy milk, almond milk kind of thing, or donor breast milk or something. But I just think that, like, it's a lot of work for a bonding experience that I think that there's other ways to bond with child. And for me, it's more just about, that's like one of the few things that I really feel like I'm missing out on by doing the adoption, is missing out on that breastfeeding bonding experience. But I don't know that it's worth the extra effort in order to pursue that breastfeeding bonding experience. But anyway, that is my rambling about pregnancy and quitting TTC. And like I said, I don't feel like I'm quitting TTC. I'm just going back to where I belong, and I'm sticking with that. So thank you for your suggestions. You can still give suggestions if you want it. Just know that I'm doing the international adoption. I'm going to do another video right after this. So hopefully they're posted maybe roughly a few hours apart, about my plans for the international adoption and life and whatnot. So anyway, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them down below. I love you guys. Thank you so much for your support with everything. I seriously don't know what I would do without you guys, because you guys really help me keep going and pushing through all these stupid little hurdles, which are now mountains that just like popping up everywhere. But I feel like with the international adoption, we are finally going to make some progress and get our asses up that mountain. And it will be totally worth it in the end. Totally worth it. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I shall talk to you guys soon.